In this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN and friend, Allen Wolfe. Janie Shoemaker and Mark Eggers talk with Allen about his career and his current role as Senior Director of Education at LifeLink, along with what he likes to do for fun. Listen to Allen's highlights of amazing stories that he has been a part of. This episode is called Meet Our BCEN Celebrity.
Hello, and welcome to BCEN and Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCEN certification holders, and industry professionals. But most importantly, to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always valuable. I'm Mark Eggers, Manager of Education Technology Services at BCEN, and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Janie Shoemaker, CEO at BCEN. Hi, Janie.
Hi, Mark.
In this episode of BCEN and Friends, we have our BCEN friend, Allen Wolfe. Janie, could you please tell us about our BCEN and friend, Allen?
I sure will, Mark. It's my pleasure to introduce Allen Wolfe. Allen was born in Mobile, Alabama, and currently resides in Minneapolis. Allen is currently the Senior Director of Education at LifeLink 3 and Air Medical Transport Company. For fun, Allen likes to travel. He has been to all 50 states and loves to travel outside the U.S., but for now, COVID has put a damper on that. Allen also loves college sports and has been to the NCAA men's basketball games every year since 1998. His new love is watching women's college gymnastics. Allen says it's just amazing. Allen is a critical care nurse who worked in the hospital for about 7 years in the CVICU and the SICU and the emergency department. Allen completed his master's in critical care clinical specialist from Marymount University, and Allen started as a flight nurse in 1990 and has had some really amazing career highlights that we are going to ask him to tell us about during this podcast. Allen has won every major award in the industry except the safety award, so I'm sure that will be on the radar next. And Allen is the chair-elect for the Board of Certification for Emergency Nursing's Board of Directors. Allen is a national and international speaker on a variety of topics. He's also the one celebrity that I personally know. I don't know any others. Please help me welcome Allen to the BCEN and Friends podcast. Welcome, Allen.
Thank you. Woo!
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you so
So,
much.
Allen, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Some of them probably already know you because you are, people always say, who's the celebrity? Do you know any celebrities? Yes, I do. I know Allen Wolfe. He's my celebrity that I know. That's what I always tell people. So some people may know you, but I bet you will teach them something new. And then some people will get to know you on this podcast. But tell us about yourself. I know you live in Minneapolis. How'd you get there? What are you doing for work? Tell us a little more about that senior education job you've got, and then just tell us anything else you'd like to know that we didn't talk about during the intro.
Great. Thank you so much, Janie. I am currently, I'll just talk about what I'm doing now. I am the Senior Director of Education for LifeLink 3. And what LifeLink 3 is, it's just a helicopter company that's owned by a consortium of hospitals here in Minnesota that we cover the Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Dakota area, so it's up here near Canada. I've been in Minneapolis in this role about 20 months. I moved here in July, and I moved here in the middle of COVID. And when I got offered the job, I was offered the job in May, and it was right before George Floyd was murdered. And so when I was hired, the next day after George Floyd was murdered, they called me and they said, we're just checking in to see if you're okay and if you're still coming, because obviously the city was a mess and that what had happened. And I said, sure, I'm still coming. Yeah. So I moved here from Denver, Colorado. My previous job, I was Director of Education for Air Methods, and Air Methods is it's the largest medevac company on one single FAA certificate in the US. And I was responsible for education for 1,500 people and 168 helicopter bases, which is just mind-blowing.
Yes, wow.
Isn't that crazy? I did that for about for 10 years. before coming here to LifeLink. And I moved from Colorado to Minnesota. And people say, "Wow, you like these cold states?" But I was born in Alabama, and I was there, at 18, 19 years old, I left and I went up to Washington, D.C., and I was there for 30 years. And at 50 years old, I decided to switch jobs after being at the one job for almost 20 years. And that got me to Air Methods, which I had to move to San Diego to Denver, and then to Minnesota. Minnesota here, although it's chilly, like today is a pretty warm 22. You know what? It's so funny. I thought I would never be one of those people that say, "God, it's so warm today." But after when you're sitting there and the temperature is below zero, 10, 20 below zero for days, and you go outside and it's 20, you go, "Oh my God, it is actually warm today."
Yeah, I mean, you could just go out without a coat in that.
I know, it's crazy. Just wear like a sweatshirt and it's 20 degrees. It's like, "Oh, it's a warm day. Let me go for a walk in 20 degrees." So I'm adapting to it. That's my career in a nutshell of how I got here. Some of the things I like to do, you mentioned already with the sports stuff, and I developed that to take the place of time of getting outside during COVID and to get in to do things. So I go to a lot of sporting events. The big thing I did was recently here in Minnesota, I walked across a frozen lake. And so I must be out of my mind, but people do that here. The lakes are frozen. You can't walk across a river like the Mississippi River, but you can walk across a lake because the river, the water's moving under it, and of course you can fall in it.
Oh yeah. But they probably have ice fishing. Do you have ice fishing there?
Yes.
You had to put those little shack things on the lake.
Yes.
Crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah, they drive their cars on it. It's crazy. So I did that. Yeah. So that's my career in a nutshell.
Wow. Well, now that is your career in a nutshell, but I also happen to know that you've had some pretty amazing opportunities. I know that you meant your own celebrity, the basketball. I'll let you tell us who that is. You had some, weren't you at the Pentagon at a very particular time? Those are two things that come to mind. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of those highlights that are just like most people never would have these kind of experiences that you had?
Right. I back in 2001, when I was a nurse back in DC, I was a flight nurse for 10 years at the Washington Hospital Center at a program called MedStar. And in around 2000, I became the chief flight nurse of their flight program, which is located right there in the city. And I was also the clinical nurse specialist of their trauma unit. So it was a dual role. I got my master's in critical care. And I was off on September 11th. It was like a Wednesday, Thursday, I think. I don't know how you get off during the week, but I was off. And I had woken up to hear about this stuff in New York. And I can remember I lived in a townhouse and I lived in Arlington, Virginia. And for those who don't know where Arlington is just right across the Potomac River in DC. It's really where the Pentagon is. It's in Arlington, it's not in DC.
Yeah.
And so I lived very close to the Pentagon. That's probably less than a mile. I lived on the golf course. And the golf course, not the pretty end of the golf course, the end where the balls come in your yard from the driving range, that part of it.
All right.
So I was talking to a buddy of mine on my deck about New York. And as we're talking about it on the deck, I could hear a plane getting louder and louder. And before you know it, just overhead with a plane flying by just above the house, not even 200-300 feet off the ground, flying right over the house. And take it now, the airport is near the house, but that is not a flight path. And so it was so low and it banked a turn over near the golf course. And I could see the faces of the people in the plane as it made a turn over the golf course. And so all of a sudden I see black smoke. And I thought, oh my God, something happened. I think the plane crashed, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't know what to do. So I hung up the phone for my buddy because I said, I got to go, something's going on. And I looked at the TV and they said, we just got reports that a plane hit the Pentagon. So I knew that I would have to go to the hospital. That's where they couldn't go. And so I immediately grabbed my bag, jumped on my scooter. Now, a scooter, not a car, a scooter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I bought one. It was like a Vespa. And it was the smartest thing I had ever done because traffic was a nightmare. And I was on a scooter. It's in right across. So anyway, I go straight to the Pentagon to see what's going on. I get down there and this black bellowing smoke and it's papers everywhere. The alarm's going off and you see people running out of the building. It's a road that goes straight down the hill to get there. A cop had blocked the street and wouldn't let me go any further. And he was trying to evacuate people out of the building. And you can see people come out the building. I saw women literally taking those high heel shoes off and just put them in their hand and run into the parking lot to get in their cars and get out of there.
Yeah.
Well, so when I got down there, I just wanted to cut by there to see it. My way to the hospital was really what I was doing. And so it was just a madhouse. And so as I got through the city, I got into DC. People in DC really didn't know what had happened to the Pentagon. Remember, this is before cell phones and social media.
Yeah, right.
So the people in DC, unless you looked across the river and saw the black smoke, you had no idea. So I got to the hospital and in my way to the hospital, the F-15s were flying over and people started to come on the streets. And I get to the hospital and there were 2 patients there already. 2 patients had already made it from the Pentagon to this burn center already. And so I had to work to take care of all those patients. So how I got to meet somebody famous after all of that, the hospital, they had a big night. It was the first night of the NBA and it was Michael Jordan's return to basketball after this is his 3rd time coming back from retirement at the Washington Bullets. That's what they're called at the time. Now it's the Washington Wizards. And so the hospital had to pick somebody to go represent the hospital for a number of different people who were considered heroes of 9/11. So I was the one, so I said, oh, great. So I go down there, they do a little ceremony in the beginning. And then I thought they were going to sing you to your seats, but I didn't realize before the game, the big ceremony, they bring out the 2 teams, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Washington Bullets, Wizards. They bring the heroes out. They put a hero between each group of players. And so I'm like the last one, next to the last one, and they pull me out as the lights are flashing, and they put me right next to Michael Jordan.
Wow.
And my heart is pounding because I'm sitting here next to Michael Jordan. So when I get next to him, I patted him on the waist and I said, hello, my name is Allen Wolfe. And he says, hello, my name is Michael Jordan. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Everybody knows you. But in front of him was 50 photographers. They were just taking pictures and he had his head down the whole time. And I said to him, this is just crazy, And he says to me, Michael says to Allen Wolfe, Michael says, I'm just a famous basketball player. I just play a sport. He said, what you do is simply amazing. And I thought, who knew Michael was so sensitive and cared?
Wow.
I know. My private conversation with Michael Jordan. So that was my Michael Jordan story. So it was on the cover of the paper in Alabama. My dad, who's 84 now, was watching it. He loves basketball. He was sitting in his house in Alabama and watching the game. And I had no idea it was going to be on television, so I told nobody. And imagine sitting there and they're showing Michael Jordan. They get ready to introduce Michael Jordan, and your son's face pops up.
Oh my gosh! Oh, he just must have about fell out of his chair.
I know, he couldn't breathe. He was like, "What? So that's how I became a celebrity in Mobile, Alabama.
Wow!
Right. Crazy story.
But now your status goes far beyond that. Yeah. That is so neat, Allen. You really have had quite the career. Something to be very proud. And you're not even done. So let's see what you're doing next.
I know. I keep thinking. I feel really young, but I know that this is the downside of the career. You can only work so long, And so just want to go up on an upswing and keep doing good work, after you go out into retirement. So,
Sure. Well, one thing that you've been involved with for a long time is the Board of Certification for Emergency Nursing. We'll just call that BCEN from here on out. When did you would have started as an item writer. How long ago was that?
I think I started in 2007 or 2008 as an item writer. And the reason I submitted an item writer is I figured I had this incredible, just at the time, career of I had the opportunity to work in a trauma unit that constantly got sick patients in an emergency setting. And then I had CVICU experience. So I had all that in my mind from knowing all this cardiovascular stuff. And then I worked at SICU, and plus I had my master's. So I figured, oh, I should probably be an item writer for this, because I always was involved in something, So I submitted, I was selected as an item writer for the BCN, and I did that for several years. I was also became the president of the Flight Nurse Association in 2014.
Yeah,
and in 20, yeah, remember? Yeah. In 20,
I remember.
Yeah, I think it's 2015, I came on the board of directors for the BCN. Before that, when I was an item writer, I got moved up to what's called the ECRC, the Exam Construction Review Committee of people that looks at the exam. And then from there to the board. So I've been a board since I think 2015, I think.
Yeah, and now you're our chair-elect, and you will be our next chairperson.
I know, isn't that crazy?
So talk about going on the upswing. That's awesome.
I know, hit the pinnacle right at the right time.
So Allen, you said you're always involved in something, and a lot of that is volunteerism. Why do you think that's so important? What would you tell our audience about what that means to you?
I think, and I've always have believed that I come from a family of nurses. My dad had 15 brothers and sisters, and 4 or 5 of those were nurses. And my mother was a nurse's aide, and then a lot of those were educators. So the nurse educator piece has always been a part of my life, and school has been a part of my life, and working has been a part of my life. My granddad was big in the civil rights movement, and he always volunteered and expected us to participate in volunteering. And so in Alabama at the time. And so it's always been something, I guess, in the family that we've done. And so I always have volunteered for things. Regarding this and why I'm involved in the nursing piece is that I think for me, the thing, if I can pat myself on the back for a second, is that I think I'm pretty well-rounded, you know what I mean? Because I've kind of done the hospital piece, I've kind of done the clinical nurse specialist piece, I've done the ED, I've done the inner city ED. Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm doing the CVICU, which is at a very wealthy hospital, and then a CVICU at another hospital. So I can have a well-rounded experience. And a flight nurse, you have to be an expert in everything. And so I think that makes me really well-rounded, and so it makes me think I have a lot to share, of what I experienced and things like that.
Yeah, I agree, and this is a great segue into my next my next thing that I want to talk to you about. You don't get where you are, Allen, without being a lifelong learner. You would not have been successful getting there with your scooter. You knew exactly what you needed to do. You had your go bag ready. You're on your scooter, which probably was really smart because you would have never gotten there otherwise. And you're going across to the hospital when you see this thing happen, and you're there to take care of those first 2 patients that are coming in. And I'm certain that everybody was really glad you were there. And you've had this amazing career where you've probably no doubt you've touched countless lives. But you don't get where you are without putting the work in. And much of that work is lifelong learning. What would you say to our nurses that are listening? Because, it's hard right now for a clinical nurse taking care of patients to have the energy and the time. But it's also disastrous if you don't put that time in. So what do you have to say about that?
I think professional development is the key to mental sanity and career advancement, though it just goes hand in hand. And I think if you're not moving forward, you're behind. You just can't sit and rely on, well, I'm done, I'm not going to try to learn or develop myself in any way. You just kind of have to. And so even when I got my bachelor's, I was what they call not organic was the word, it was a traditional student, meaning that I wasn't an RN already when I went to college. A lot of my classmates are RNs already. I was just organic and didn't know anything, or traditional. And so I got my bachelor's there. And then the hospital had said, we're going for magnet. We need these nurse leaders to have their masters in the field, which they're responsible. And so I had never thought of getting a master's degree, but I thought, oh, I can do this. I've been doing this a while. How hard can it be, And so I always wanted to be a clinical nurse specialist because it was focused on critical care and a lot of education and research. And so I went to school at Marymount University in Arlington, Virginia for my master's, went to George Mason for my bachelor's in Virginia. And I got that. And when I was in my class, everybody was a nurse practitioner. What's now I look back is that, man, they saw it coming. It's that, nurse practitioner stuff is everywhere, and clinical nurse specialists are not the way it used to be. And so just that kind of learning always followed me. Certifications was another big piece of that. I got my first one way back when critical care, when I was in the CVICU, CCRN. And then after that, I just started adding to the rest of them, And I think the reason I did those, like the CFRN, a CTRN, and the recent trauma one I got 2 years ago, is all of those validates my knowledge. You know what I mean? And I think it just makes me feel, and makes others feel too, that this person has validated their competency in a particular field. And so that's why I've always done those and encourage others to do that, because it's important. It's important that you validate your specialty besides just having a nursing license. So I think it's really important to do.
Well, thank you for that. I can't say that I disagree with you at all. I applaud everything you just said. So thank you for sharing those thoughts about lifelong learning and how important that is. Yeah. So I'm going to quit hogging the conversation and let Mark get in on the action. I think Mark wants to ask you he wants to talk to you about a couple of things here.
I do. I want to ask you some things. Now, you've done a lot of things in your life. Met Michael Jordan. You've been all the right places at the right time for things. Just a lot of things have happened. But can you tell us about a person or a moment in your career that greatly impacted you?
I think there'll be a couple. I think patient-wise, I would say the first time that I was working in the ICU, I took care of a 15-year-old white girl who I was driving a car by herself. I guess she lost control, hit a tree, and she had traumatic brain injury. She lived in the burbs in Virginia, and her family came in, and that she just wasn't doing well. They felt that she was brain dead, and family was really upset. And they really wanted to donate her organs, but they really couldn't, because when they did the brain study, she just didn't fit the criteria to be truly brain dead to harvest her organs. And so they were at the unit in the bedside, and she was declining. And so I went and got the family, and I said, "Oh, she's not doing well. I asked you to come to the bedside." So I went to the room, and they come in the bedside, and her heart rate's dropping, and her blood pressure is way high, which is not a good sign with traumatic brain injury. And so things were going down south, and there were some other family members there in the room. And so I was just trying to get out the room, and the dad says to me, I'm trying to cry. The dad says to me, "Allen, I want you here at our bedside because we consider you as family." Because I had to take care of this girl this time, and this has been years ago. And as you can see,
yep,
it still gets to me, And it's somebody I didn't even know. I mean, I don't know them. I was just the nurse, and they just valued what I had done for that time for their teenager who they had to watch decline and die at the bedside, but they really wanted to give her organs away, and they couldn't, and she died. So I never stayed in contact with them after that, that's where it stopped. But I always have thought of her when I think about just my career of a patient. That kind of sticks in your mind. I think of that girl, and her family asking me to be at their bedside, to be with them, to do that. When I could have easily stood outside, pull the curtain, close the door, and the whole family do their thing. They really want me to do that. So that's the biggest thing for them. Career-wise, that would be a teacher. When I was in my teens, remember, I'm born in the 60s, obviously. And in Alabama, we had segregation in the 70s. So I had to be bused from the Black neighborhood I lived in to the white school across town, which was not a big issue. I just didn't have any white friends. Most of us didn't, because we didn't kind of live together. We lived in obviously different then. But it was a teacher in the local school. His name was Mr. McNally, and is a older white guy, older. He's in his 80s now, but for me, he's probably in his 40s, 30s and 40s. And what he did is that he would go to the library in our neighborhood and give free lessons on geometry and algebra and science, math.
Wow.
Because he understood that those, not underprivileged, everybody's underprivileged these days, but the kids in this neighborhood needed an advantage if they were going over across the town to do that. And on his own, not charging a dime, this white man got in this library and taught us about algebra and geometry and those kind of things. And so it has been extremely valuable, because I was one of those people, 12, 13-year-olds sitting there listening to him every Saturday morning, for weeks to do that. And so I've never forgotten him. He's still alive, in Alabama, in Mobile. And it was a teacher that I thought, man, he, was a visionary, and just helped my career, as a transitioning from the high school. It's just amazing.
Wow. I just want to say, Allen, it's very clear to me how you have such a heart for giving back. This is, talk that patient story you told, I'm almost in tears. But when I listen to you talk about your family and this particular man, you had people that they showed you how to do it. And I just think that's incredible.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking, you were excited to meet Michael Jordan. Little did he know who he met. He met somebody. Yeah.
Michael Jordan's lucky day. Exactly.
Yeah. He most likely tells his friends the same story, only reverse. Well, Allen, you mentioned coattailing as a way to get others involved. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah. What coattailing is that as I became known as a speaker or expert in a particular, on a topic or field, I felt that for others to get involved is something called role modeling or coattailing. Role modeling is allowing people to see something and want to mimic that. And so coattailing allows you to bring on people with you so they can get that experience, that they normally wouldn't have, and to be able to participate. For instance, at a conference, if I'm doing a conference and I'm the speaker on something, I'll have a co-speaker. That co-speaker may not be a person that anybody knows or is a good speaker, but a neophyte that needs to get exposure. And so I would do that quite frequently, is pair myself with people to allow them to get exposure on the platform. I would do some talking, obviously, because I'm on the docket to speak, but I would obviously turn it over to others to allow them to coattail, to be seen and heard, to develop their own career. So I've done a lot with the speaking portion. In the authorships or books or writing, a girl named Carol Rowling. Carol Rowling is a clinical nurse specialist. I think she lives in Florida now. She did live in North Carolina, but I met her in DC at the Washington Hospital Center. And she was the first one who allowed me to coattail with her. She wrote pretty frequently for the Critical Care Journal for AACN. And one day she asked me, hey, do you want to do an article with me? And that was the introduction to editing and writing. I did one with her on blunt chest trauma, specifically to the heart, and I wrote the article. And I was, she didn't have as much trauma experience that I had, obviously, but she was an experienced writer and valued at that particular organization, in writing. So I coattailed with her. So I made a point to start doing that in the writing piece. So currently I am the editor, along with two other people for the ASNA book known as Principles and Practice of Patient Transport. And it is the granddaddy of them all when it comes to books in the air, medical, ground transport industry. And I'm the editor along with two others. And so just recently, that book it's on the 6th edition that's coming up. I introduced this year to Elsevier to have a companion book that's just as big. And Elsevier accepted. It's like a critical care book attached to this other book. So it's two big books. And so I'm the editor. So when I mentioned coattailing, now in this role of an editor, I have the ability to work with people that may not have a lot of experience writing medical stuff, but are smart and excellent clinicians. That's their opportunity to get their foot in the door and get published, because everybody wants to get published or needs to get published to be seen. So that's what I call as coattailing, both from coattailing when speaking, and then of course publication. Very
good, excellent, thank you, Alan. I'm going to turn this a little bit to what we call our rapid fire questions section. So, what would you be doing if you were not in your current role?
You know what? I wish that I was a singer. Oh my God.
There we go.
You ever watch those shows like American Idol or The Voice?
Yeah.
And you kept thinking, God, I wish that I could sing. You know.
And what kind of music would you like to sing? What genre?
See, I like to do those love ballads like the Luther Vandross kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
You know, the singer's like, that's not a singer, that's a singer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think we must have a karaoke party in our future.
Oh my God, I can't sing though. That's the thing. I can't sing.
Well, you're among friends at the karaoke, so who cares?
Exactly. So I wish I could, Mark, but I wish I could be. I would be a singer.
I'm with you. I like that. That's neat. Good. Now, a few favorite questions, and you can say skip if you don't want to, but a current favorite book.
My current favorite book.
We were just saying, is it How to Sing in 5 Easy Lessons? Is that your
No, dude, I wish. The book is called, I just got it. It's called Because I Said I Would.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't started yet. It's by Alex Sheen. And so I can't wait to look at this one. I just recently finished a course on diversity and inclusion through Cornell University.
Mm-hmm.
Of the online course I took. And I took it not for work. It is because, you know, being a minority in this, I'm a unicorn, I know, in air medical, is that people will ask me all the time about how do we attract, you know, more Black people? How do we attract more women? Asking me, because obviously I'm the unicorn in the room. I'm sure that's why. And so the issue like diversity, inclusion, and that whole thing, I didn't know a lot about it. So I took a course at Cornell. And so I just finished in December. So now I have a lot of stuff in this head. You know, about
good.
it.
That's good. We've got some board work. We're going to need that stuff in your head for us. That's great.
Awesome.
And how about your current favorite movie?
You know, my favorite movie is Mommy Dearest. I've seen it at least 70 times, where I would sit there and say the words out of Joan Crawford's mouth before she says, "Isn't that stupid?" I'm obsessed with that movie. I just watch it.
It's great.
That's good.
I can just hear you sitting there. You know every line. After 70 times watching, you should know. Yeah.
I know. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy.
And how about a favorite song?
My favorite song. I am a Diana Ross fanatic. I've seen Diana Ross 42 times. And I tell you, Mark, I'm not a stalker. I promise.
Oh, is that a concert? Okay.
Yeah, so her music, anything that she puts out, I just love the music. So any Diana Ross song. My favorite one of hers is Ain't No One How Enough. It's one of my favorites. You know, but I love her music.
And her daughter's very talented too, by the way.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
I know. Excellent. Great. And how about your favorite comfort food or meal that you enjoy?
Recently, it was chips and salsa. Oh man, I would buy the big Doritos with the lime in it, and then get the pico from the store that's already made, and then I would put jalapenos in it and more cilantro and more onions, and I would eat literally almost the whole bag. And then I realized these bags in my eyes due to sodium and salt. So I had to stop. I was literally eating a bag every 4 days. I was thinking, this is heart failure coming if I don't stop it. So I stopped doing that. And now my new thing is fruit. I just eat fruit. That's my new thing.
Fruit's good.
We need to get Doritos to make a lower sodium chip.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, really, they should consider that.
Not
So if
well
anybody
thought.
in our audience knows anybody to tell that to, please go ahead.
Because the rest of your salsa and whatnot was all vegetables. It's all good. We just need
Yeah.
the salt in the chip.
Yes, they're so good.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay.
And with your schedule and all you got going on and everything just going, as I said, any other hobbies or interest?
I think my biggest one is traveling outside the country. I usually would go twice a year somewhere outside the country. Due to COVID these past couple of years, I've stayed. I'm afraid to go out the country because I'm figured, one, I won't be able to get back in. You know, you don't want to be trapped somewhere. You're like, I don't want to be out there somewhere. Or you get too sick and then you end up in a hospital in a foreign country and you don't understand stuff. So I like to travel. So the past 2 years, I've done Alaska a lot. Alaska is amazing, you know, amazing. So not in the winter, I mean, I've gone in the summer every year this past couple of years, but it is truly amazing. So I like the travel piece.
So you go up to like Denali or Anchorage or Prudhoe? Where do you go?
I went to Anchorage and I was there for 4 days. And I have a buddy who is a flight paramedic there who I work with in DC. I stay at his house, him and his wife's house. And I just did the train from Anchorage to
Denali. Gotcha.
Yeah, SeaWorld. Yeah. This summer I'll go up to Denali in my trip there this time. But it was stunning to see just moose just walking on the bike trail and rams that are on the mountains. It is just unbelievable. You become truly an environmentalist when you see that place because you're thinking, we cannot melt this. Are you kidding me? There's glaciers and that. It's just amazing. It makes you that thinks about the environment a lot.
And while you were there, you said you stayed at a friend's house. Did you have salmon?
Yeah, we went fishing. I caught nothing, matter of fact. But you know, you see them; they're so big, and they're just the water is so shallow. You just want to I can reach down and get them. You know,
with one company I worked with, I was up there and so I went to a few different houses while I was there, and then we always had salmon. Everybody has salmon in their freezer.
Yeah, they do. And I had some at a sushi bar, and the whole salmon is laying on a thing, and you get the sashimi, and he goes over with a knife, and he literally cuts it out of the fish, puts it on a plate, and bring it to you. And I go, ugh, you know, but it's that fresh, you know. Just the fish is there open, and you're like, man, is that how it really does it?
I'm with you. Yeah.
It was good though. It was really good.
Good. Excellent. Well, if our audience would like to follow you online, you said LinkedIn is where they could find you? Yeah,
LinkedIn is where I hang out and I scroll a lot. I find out a lot of stuff about the BCN on LinkedIn that I didn't even know. I go, oh, I didn't know that. I found a webinar. I said, oh, I didn't know that was coming. And that's how I signed up for it.
Excellent. Great.
Excellent.
Well, I want to take this time to thank you, Allen, for joining us for this episode of BCN and Friends. Thank you for sharing your time, your stories, and just being with us here today. Thank you so much, Allen.
No, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
And to all our listeners, we hope you stay tuned as we continue on with BCN and Friends and bring you new and meaningful content and perspectives. If you have a suggestion for an episode, please email us at bcn@bcn.org. I am Mark Eggers here with Janie Shoemaker, and on behalf of the entire BCN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you are doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time,